Good morning and welcome to Making Sense of It. I'm Mona Duncan, your moderator, and this program is for you. It is a gift from the Glasser Institute for Choice Theory. And each week we have a staff member, one that is certified or even a supervisor with the Glasser Institute, to present a concept and explain to us how they use it. And we are honored today to have Brian Patterson with us. He is the executive director of the Glasser Institute. Hello, Brian. Welcome, welcome.
Good morning, Mona, and thanks for the opportunity to share today.
Sure. The topic today is principles for adult learning, and I'm really looking forward to this. So he's going to help us how to remember things. So, Brian, we're ready anytime you are.
All right. Well, thank you so much. In my day job with the Department of Economic Security for the state of Arizona, I do instructor training and certification. We have instructors that teach different tasks and leadership for 8,000 employees who serve 2 million people a year. And one of the things that I have noticed and learned coming from my education background is that adult learning is different than what you expect in school. And I wanted to show you some of those principles and talk about how they fit with our choice theory concepts. And if you're teaching choice theory, things to pay attention to about how adults are going to embed this learning in their thinking for long term. I wanted to show you just a little activity, I guess, kind of an icebreaker thing that I started when I was working in leadership development at Goodwill. And this is something you could easily make, and probably better than I do. But we created a leaf like that. And on one side, it says, how do you want this to be? So like when we're welcoming them into a learning environment, is asking them basically what is their goal, what are they trying to accomplish. And so on that side of the leaf, they would write how do you want this to be? And you can see that one of the participants wrote what their goals were for the time. On the other side, we put, what will you do to make it that way? So basically asking them for their contribution. And if you're familiar with choice theory, with the WDEP, that's the W and the D right there. What is their plan for that? And it'd be in small groups of maybe 18 at the most. And so they would fill those out. And then each person, because it was a workshop that lasted 4 or 5 sessions, they would come to the front and they would share what they wrote on each side of that leaf. And then we had a little kind of a decorative tree with no leaves on it. And so then they would hang their leaf on that tree. And then by the end of session 5, we would meet together and have them take their leaf and look and see how did they do. So they would do their evaluation. But immediately that's getting them to make a commitment to learning in that setting. And that's really important for adults that are in a learning setting to be active in that way. And so to immediately have their commitment to what this is all about. And it's different than in typical education. And a lot of people, if they've never been a facilitator and they gain their certification with Glasser, I think we revert mentally to a teaching mode sometimes that where we lose track. Now, I'm going to share with you some things from what I learned from a lady named Vicki Halsey, and this is her book, Brilliance by Design, and she's the vice president for applied learning for the Ken Blanchard companies, and she had some fantastic things on virtual presentations, and that's one of the things I would like to see all of our faculty members as adept as possible at online presentations and training, things like that. So we've got couple. I see Sue and I see Alice. Hi, Sue. Sue's driving somewhere. Probably, I don't know. Sue, do you drive really fast or? Oh, I can't hear you. It's okay. I'm not going to ask you to put anything in chat either. So anyway, I like the sunroof is open. In Arizona, we don't do that very often until fall, late fall. Excuse me. And would you put everybody that can put in the chat where are you located right now? Everybody looks so serious. Looks like everybody's typing, but I don't see anything yet. Might be my eyes. All right, Excelsior Springs, I definitely know where that is. And let's see. Wow, so we're all over the place. Nice. Something happened with my chat went away when I put the other screen up. One of the things about online is I panic right away. All right, well, let's go ahead. I'm gonna have to pretend. Oh, here we go. There it is. So Valley Stream, suburb of New York City, Sue's cousin. I had to say that right, Long Island, is that the way we say it? And you're from Beth?
Absolutely.
All right, Long Island, all right. So I'm from
You're
Arizona.
welcome anytime.
Oh, okay. That sounds good. Okay, and so visiting the Jersey Shore today. Nice. Well, thank you. I'm glad you're joining us today. And always good to see you, Sue and Sharon. We talk a little bit now and then.
Occasionally.
It seems like that. These are my only friends, Alice. So, but talking about adult learning principles, I'd like for you to take a look at that quote there, if you can see that, from W. Edwards Deming, who, because of my organizational experience and the connection with Dr. Glasser, one of my favorite people. But he said we must preserve the power of intrinsic motivation, dignity, cooperation, curiosity, joy, and learning that people are born with. And how do you think that fits with our concepts of choice theory?
Well, fun is one of the basic needs.
Mm-hmm.
Coming from Quality Squirrel, it definitely, the joy in learning strikes me right off the top as that. And intrinsic, we can only control ourselves.
Right.
We can, we go ahead and pretty much name all the needs right there.
Yeah, it's really close, isn't it? And I wish that Deming and Dr. Glasser could have worked together. That would have been just incredible. I think because seeing the parallels But and I this on the bottom of my emails at work because I don't know who were we talking to yesterday, but I teach the concepts of choice theory, and people don't necessarily know what it is, but they're still learning that at the state of Arizona. So that's kind of what we want to talk about today is how do I put together my own program and my teaching so that I do this, I preserve that intrinsic motivation. Because some people will, kind of hide it and just endure the session till they get out. That's usually what adults do, but they're thinking about something else most of the time. And with Sue driving, it's okay to think about something. But some of those things we think we're multitasking, but really your brain just switches from one thing to another. We can only activate the brain linearly unless it's something that's a rote task that we continually do. Like Mona showed the video of Dr. Glasser doing a role play with a guy in I think North Carolina who worked at as a loom or some kind of a factory. So he had crazy thoughts all day because he had this mindless job. They did the same thing every day for I think Mona was like 17 years or something. The guy said he'd been at this factory. And
Right.
so, in that, the brain can do that. You can think about something else and do something with your hands that, like driving, that you've learned over the years. And the brain has embedded that process deeper in the cortex so that you can do that and still think about something else. But if it's something that requires cognitive involvement, you can only do one thing at a time. And so that's the problem sometimes with multitasking is people go back and forth and it's hard to focus. That way you lose time unless you can focus on one thing at a time. So when we're doing in a learning session, it's to be aware of that. Vicki Halsey said that in person, you need to have people involved about every 8 minutes or less. If you're online, if it's virtual, it's important to engage about every minute and a half, do something where they're clicking and visiting chat, reading something, whatever it might be. And I always like to have people read so that people hear different voices. I hear lots of voices in my head, but those don't count. But when we're online and sharing something like this, it's important that we, there's variety. So some of the things that we want to talk about today is just the awesome opportunity of facilitating learning for adults, how you can define 2 styles of facilitating, and there are 5 adult learning principles to know the use of a pie. Now that's not like a cherry pie, but it's an acronym that we'll share later. And the engage model is something I'll share with you if you're creating courses. That is very helpful from Vicki Halsey. And then to build on knowledge, help you reach your true north. What is it that drives you? What is your goal? What is your vision? What's your mission in life? That's the true north. And the true north comes from people navigating by where the North Star is and knowing their direction by knowing that North Star that's always there is kind of their anchor to find their direction. So when wagon trains were going west after the Civil War, and Sharon especially would know this, the landscape in Kansas is not that great. And if you're only going 20 miles a day in a wagon train, every day looks the same. So how do you know which direction to go? How do you know that you're going to arrive where you want to? At night when they circled the wagons, the wagon that was going to lead the next day would point the wagon tongue when they put the circle together. They would point that wagon tongue to the North Star as it came out, so that in the morning when they started off, they knew from where that wagon tongue was what direction they should go. If they're going west, it'd be 90 degrees. If they were going Santa Fe Trail, it was probably a little bit different. but that was their true north. So I always like to ask people, and I like to ask you, inside, what is the driving force within you? What is your true north? If you, you came to the point that you die and you look back and you felt like you'd accomplished what you wanted in life, what is inside you that tells you you've done that? So put that in the chat if you can think of a kind of a term that drives you in everything you do. Okay, Linda said joy. Nice, I like that. Sharon said to serve. Mona, patience and kindness. I'll put mine in there too. Sue, to be happy. And to carry on, Alice said, to carry on legacy of my family from Eastern Europe. Where in Eastern Europe was that, Alice?
Well, called by many different names, but basically Eastern Poland, now it's Western Ukraine, on both sides of my family. Even though my mother's father was from Russia, but the only place they allowed Jews to live in Russia was in this, one particular area. So I think they were all from my father's father died in the Holocaust, and my father and his brothers and sisters came to the United States before the Holocaust. So.
Wow, so that is meaningful. And one of the things that I think is important, that you have that passion that can drive us through a lot of things that really make a difference in the lives of others, because there's something about you that kind of exudes to other people around you, and that, to me, that's pretty special. So that's what I always try to help people find. What is it that drives you most? What is it that you'd give up everything else for? And adults can think on that level and are not often asked about that. So that's one thing. Now I'm going to show you this. I just selected some famous teachers that we've seen before and movies and things like that. And I'd like to ask you, think about what are some qualities of your favorite teacher you ever had, and put that in the chat. Characteristics of your favorite teacher. Mona said humor. Sue said engaging and caring. Now, Sue, hang on to that word engaging. That may come up later. Alice said determination and sense of humor. Sharon said fair, joyful, fun, and knows the topic. You notice that's the first time the concept of skill came up. Most of the others are, character traits. I think especially in learning that's what comes across most is that you care about people. And I'm so glad that people brought up joyful and sense of humor, because I try really hard at that part. But, so in preparing yourself for some kind of instruction, sometimes it's important to channel some of those people that we've had before. And Linda said she encouraged me to believe in myself and to go to college when others were discouraging me. Now I have advanced degrees. Look at that long-lasting effect that a teacher can have. That's pretty amazing. So thanks everybody for sharing those things. I will talk a little bit about the two styles of learning. So if you take a look at those two pictures, we have pedagogy versus andragogy. Isn't that fun? I love it when we have special terms that make us seem smarter than everybody else. What differences do you see in those pictures? How would you describe it? Oh, we have music too. That's good. How would you do? And you can open your mic if you want. How do you see the differences in those pictures?
Hey, John.
We can't see the teacher in the bottom one.
Oh, she's way up at the board
Okay,
drawing.
okay,
or
on the right,
writing stuff.
where yeah, I see her in that one. And everyone's facing her, all structured, setting together. The other one seems to be just a group of people. I do not see a teacher or instructor in it. But they're very puzzled. They're definitely engaged.
Well,
At least
that's,
thinking.
Yes.
that's part of that kind of andragogy is where it's we're seeking the knowledge, not delivering the knowledge. And one of the things I always try to do in settings when we're putting up adult learning is that we will put groups of people in pods rather than big U shape where it's even the way the room looks should give you different angles than you usually have, where it's not like we're going to sit passively and somebody's going to tell us stuff.
Mhm.
And so it's engaging. Now this is the right one's from a movie in Indonesia, and the guy in the middle is the teacher. So he has his whole group looking at this problem together rather than him looking down at them and sharing his knowledge or wisdom. And that's the exploratory nature of andragogy, I think, is really important, because we have kind of these kinds of settings. So the pedagogy, which we typically see in schools, especially in the lower grades, is telling, showing, obvious expertise. The teacher knows everything, and dependence on that teacher and external evaluation, which my discovery when I worked with at-risk high school kids is that the only way to really engage them in learning was using these adult learning principles, even though they were only 15. There was something different about them. And Linda said that one group was reacting and thinking. And it's usually the pedagogy. And like Charlie Brown said, the philosopher, Linus asked him, what's the difference between an A student and an F student? And Charlie said, well, the A student remembers the material 5 minutes before the test. So a lot of times, all that we do is regurgitate information to move to the next lesson. And the andragogy is about humble inquiry, independence, discovery, and concurrent evaluation. So the individual and the leader are evaluating together. Excuse me. I couldn't find the cough button on here, but So you see the differences. So if you as an adult, which one of these kinds of learning would you want to be involved in? That's a dumb question, right? Every once in a while, that's a dumb question, but we know the answer. Now, here are the kind of the categories on the pedagogy versus andragogy. One is teacher driven, one's learner driven. And I would think of myself as the lead learner because I'm going to learn as much from the adults in the room as I teach. And it happens every time. One of the assumptions of adult learning is the people that you're teaching probably know at least 85% of what you're going to teach them anyway. So what you want to know is find out what they learn and then just teach the rest. Or, and I think with choice theory, because now, years ago it was different. If you ask everybody, whose behavior do you control, there might have been a different answer than we get now. But now, even if people have not experienced choice theory at all, and you ask them that question, it's only my own. So it's, to me, it seems like Glasser's concepts have embedded themselves in the society already, a lot of them, but we're here to help organize that in a way that people can truly use it. So we have the assumptions of the need to know, learners need to know what they must learn to pass. That's not really going to affect their lives. In the andragogy, the learner driven is that adults need to know why they need to learn something. So like Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. And, for me, being able to communicate well, Glasser concept's very important for us. Learners self-concept, and you can see the difference there. Adults want to be independent. When we teach, adults take advantage of their knowledge and learning, their experience, and see how can I weave this into the lesson. And then the readiness to learn. Learners come to school because, I have to graduate, I have to have a diploma, I have to have this degree. So I keep going in the organization that people have told me, do this next. Adults, after they've graduated, they want to come to learn because of something that will give them an advantage, that will help them cope, and contributes to their body of knowledge. And different adults have different levels of interest in learning. I had once in my schools that was bragging to students he was 40 years old and he hadn't read a book since college. And I thought immediately, this person should not be teaching, because if you're not learning, you shouldn't be teaching. And but he was a drummer for some heavy metal band, so I thought, well, that probably makes sense. But you want to find the adults who are ready to learn things they need to know. And all of us, especially in relationships, have room for a lot of growth there. So we'll go to what the adult learning principles are. And this started after World War II, when many of the GIs were coming back and had GI Bill and wanted to learn. But there were a lot of them who didn't have a high school diploma, and they signed up and left for war. And after they'd been in war for 2 or 3 years and came back, and they're 21, what do you do with them to help them get a high school diploma? Well, they started some of the adult education programs, found out you can't teach the same way you did, when they were just 14 or 15. So here are the 5 that were identified, and there's some other lists and things like that. But read those and see which ones can you connect with, like Glasser's 5 basic needs or the axioms or something like that in choice theory. And you can unmute and talk about it, or put it in chat, whichever you prefer.
Well, they pretty much match the basic, the needs. The self-directed is certainly freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Problem solving would go more with power need. ready to learn. It's kind of fun.
And Glasser said the genetic reward of learning is fun.
Mhm.
And so there has to be that incorporated into it. Good point. Anything else anybody else sees in that those principles?
I think about it from quality schools work also, that learning is meaningful and useful,
Mhm.
and that being non-coercive is
Right.
really a lot of that self-directed piece, and that it's purposeful learning.
Yeah, yeah.
What really strikes me from adults is the idea, but actually from kids too.
Yeah.
Like the idea of having experience, but the idea of using a learner's experience, which is a lot of the
Right.
meaningfulness, I think.
Yeah, and that takes the creativity of the leader. How do you use that? How can you find a way to build on that person's experience to incorporate what you're trying to help them learn? So that, and I'm glad you guys identified that, because that's to me was when I first saw this, I said that really kind of matches what we're already teaching. So this shouldn't be just for adults, but when we're doing our presentations, whether we're doing it online, whether you're creating a course or some of our basic intensive we might do virtually, just keeping in mind, how do I incorporate these things into what I'm doing? So I'm going to hasten on a little bit. They want to be able to apply learning to solve problems. So I want people to be able to walk out of a session with a tool or two that they can actually use immediately. And then using, like Sue said, their wealth of life experiences. And like with the state, when we hire somebody, we hire them for a job and they fit with the job, but we don't necessarily tap into some of their previous knowledge that could add to the learning of everybody else around them. And that's one thing I like to incorporate. And is this Glasser here, do you think? And the more motivated they are to participate, the more they're going to retain information. And so to me, and when I teach this, I incorporate choice theory into to what we share with our instructors at the Department of Economic Security. And then ready to learn. If they're not ready to learn, you might as well not do it, because nothing's going to happen. It's not going to be much fun for them or you. But when they seek out subjects that are practical, when they have the option, and I've noticed when we have people that are assigned, or we call it voluntold, to come to one of our classes, it takes me 10 to 15 minutes to kind of warm up the room to get them to where they're, okay, I can handle this. If they signed it voluntarily, it doesn't take any time at all. And then you can feel the difference in the room. It's pretty amazing. A little bit harder to sense online. Anyway, and self-directed, they need to be free to direct their own learning, creating options for how they're going to learn this. And we talk sometimes about learning styles, but that's how people choose to learn. And we can all switch to another style if we need to, but we always have a preference because that's worked before. So what can a facilitator do? Think of a pie. So these would be kind of 4 categories we put it into. I like food, so I had to make it an acronym that worked with that. The first one is the application. How are they going to apply this? So what we share today, I'd like to encourage you to, if you're creating a course, or that could be virtual or even in person, that you think about these categories. So first of all, what's the application? Introduce a concept, practice it one chunk at a time. And I'm sure that Sue's familiar, Sharon too, with the chunking approach to learning. You teach one thing, have some kind of practice, build on that, another chunk, build on that. And it gradually, then it sinks into the neocortex more, and people can put it together. Sometimes we use the cognitive confusion a little bit because you create interest by puzzles and helping people to they just have to stop and think, because and you probably do it right now. You in your mind, you might be thinking of something else. Every once in a while, your mind drifts to, oh, I need to get milk at the store or whatever it might be. Adults are a little bit different that way, but I don't think it's that significant. I would like to take these kinds of principles to high schools too. I think students would learn more effectively because they're so sophisticated now, but not as mature. And but the application, how am I going to use this? When am I going to use algebra? That kind of thing. I heard that a lot in school. And problem solving, this AP in a pie, introduce scenarios, let them brainstorm solution. The teacher doesn't always give the solution. Even leaving it overnight to think about is pretty interesting, how people can do that. Ensure interactive team discussions where everyone's involved. And sometimes it's hard because introverts learn a little bit differently. They learn by observing and listening more than speaking. And some of us, I can see pictures of people that I know that are definitely not introverts, but just understanding that we want to involve everybody on some level throughout a session. And then experience, the E in the API is acknowledge their experience, guide them to use it in discussions and thinking activities, and always relate it to content. I like the interactive approach in a lot of ways. And one of the things is, like with this group here, I don't know a lot about all of your experience. And I think like with Alice's comments about Eastern Europe, I would like to look for ways, how can we involve that in a discussion? Because that's a different culture. How does that affect the way Alice thinks? So those would be some of the things that we would consider. I'm going to show you this, and this is easily available online. You can download this PDF, but it's the engage model from the Blanchard group, that when you design a course online or virtually in any way that you do it, if you send it out or whatever, even in person, I think it's important that the different categories. I'm not going to belabor this at all, but it's something you can get from Vicki Halsey for free. Just look for the engage model. But this is the acronym: energize learners, navigate the content. And that does include lecture and demonstration. But then as much as possible, we want to generate meaning so that it moves to the long-term memory. And all of those pathways of thought have to myelinate, where it's basically fat that wraps around a process where it happens quickly the next time. But it takes a while to establish that path. And then apply to the real world. It demonstrates skills, gauge and celebrate. Look how much you learn. And then extend the learning to action. So now what are you going to do about it? As you look through that, any comments?
It's interesting, seems doable.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point.
Um,
Go ahead, Sharon.
I just think it's a good teaching learning model, of which there have been many through the years. But I like the verbiage and the way she's got it organized here. It's very succinct.
Yeah, thank you for sharing it. Thank you for sharing, Sharon.
I've been sharing tale for a long time.
Right. Yeah, I like one of the things that gauge and celebrate. For me, it's kind of assessing through the conversation how much of the people actually learned of what they're sharing. How do we anchor that so they will use it? And then, to see later on what's the action. We have a fourth level assessment at where I work. We have a survey that's level 1 at the end of a class. Then we go out and do an observation level 2 like a month later. And then we can even move it out to what's the return on investment? how did this class improve, the performance in the workplace? Things like that that we assess that, to me are fascinating. I don't know how to use that with our Glasser organization yet, but we'll figure that out. Because I'd like to see, where do we invest our time and efforts most that bring back the most positive response and impact on the world around us. So you can download that online. Also, I'd encourage you to check out Vicki Halsey if you can, and watch a video of her. I've never seen anybody as bubbly and joyful online, and yet it's meaningful. It's not just entertaining, but she's amazing. So I learned a lot from her. I've been doing this a long time. Anyway, that's her Engage content design, and those are the things we do to create an environment for people for learning to happen. And this is one of my favorite quotes, which is something that restrains me a lot of times. In adult learning, it's not about being the sage from the stage, but being the guide from the side. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So what I'd prefer is to, like if you decide to put together a course that you're going to deliver online, if I can help in any way, if I can support that, these tools help and you wanted to discuss something, I would love to do that. It's not that, sometimes I'm not necessarily that smart, but I listen pretty well. And a lot of times people just being able to say it out loud, they think, boy, that really didn't make sense. In my head, it did, but when it came out, it didn't. So what do we do? How do we make an idea better? And so I want to let you know, the people that are on this workshop right now, you have a brilliance in you. Your contribution is valuable. And the art that you create is precious. Only you can do, and you must. So thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Brian. That was absolutely fantastic. Really, really good. And thank all of you that were here and the contributions that you made, either in chatting out loud or writing it in the chat box. We appreciate that you're being engaged. So we'll go ahead and close out for today and invite you to come every Wednesday. And in the meantime, have lots of fun and good mental health. Blessings. Okay, we have stopped the recording and we'll open for dialogue if anyone would like to make some comments.
Brian,
Go ahead, Alice.
thanks, Sharon. I might forget. You go
No.
first. Anyway, in one of the, you mentioned introverts and how things may have to be a little different for them. I actually listened to a book on CD a while ago, and it really so powerful. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's by Susan Cain. Quiet, the power of introverts in a world that can't stop talking. So, I just wonder how classrooms, both for younger students and adults, have to consider the needs of an introvert, as opposed to, everybody sitting around and near one another and, being able to discuss things. I'm trying to, I'm not an introvert. I don't think I am, maybe sometimes, but, how do we give an introvert the similar learning experience while respecting their introvertness?
Yeah. Well, I learned a lot of that from my wife because she is and I'm not. So she would explain, she doesn't like to be called on, in any kind of a session or anything. I would, like if it was somebody that in a classroom that I was interacting with a lot, I would want them to journal or write down their thoughts
Okay,
and just check in with me later to share what they thought about something.
well,
One thing I learned is when the introvert does speak, it's very important to focus and listen because they've been thinking about this all day and they finally, gotten the courage to say it out loud, or you've created the environment where they feel safe enough. And so, and I do a lot more small group stuff because if there's only 3 or 4 people they're talking to, they're more comfortable participating. And then I, as the leader, I'm going to observe and watch and see how connected they are with the folks around them. And then whatever they write down, I might mention it without saying their name, just to say, I noticed somebody on the table wrote down this. That's a great point. But if you draw attention to them or they feel embarrassed, you've damaged that relationship, I think, in a lot of ways. So it's how do I encourage them without embarrassing them, which is takes a lot of tact. And I know, again, my wife explained that stuff to me a lot, how to fix her. But I have seen that book. I haven't read it yet. I probably should, but if it said extroverts, I probably would have already read it. But that one would be just life affirming.
it's wonderful to listen to. It's kind of like a therapy session every time
Oh yeah,
you listen to it. So it's
I have to check that one out.
Well, part of what I think about when I think about like introverts, extroverts is the idea of energy.
Mhm.
So where do people drive their energy from? So people will define extroverts and introverts in
Right.
that manner. So if an extrovert, in a sense, gets their energy from people and being around people and talking with people and actually interacting and all of that, where an introvert gets their energy from their own thoughtfulness and their own processing. So, I mean, I wonder then to a sense of if we think about energy as motivation. Yeah, so it's like that internal motivation, whatever it is. And then you think about people being engaged. How do we, so, I mean, I know one of the brain-based strategies that Marcia Tate talks about all the time is games,
Mhm.
and people who do a great job with games. And then I also think about and go, God, I hate games. It's like, no, don't throw a ball at me. And no, don't, it's like, oh geez, can you just be a little more academic, and you just kind of go, okay, where does the energy come from? And what kinds of choices can we help participants with?
Right.
The idea is processing the information.
Yeah, and it takes more time
and the
with
choices and whatever the processing activity is. I'm
Yeah,
sorry, Brian, say again.
The introvert takes more time when they process. They're more careful about step by step. And I always tell people, extrovert doesn't know what they think until they say it out loud. And I know that's for me, and it comes out. I think, yeah, that's pretty good. But my wife will spend a week crafting that sentence, and that either way is okay. You need both. It's important if you create groups not to put 2 introverts in a group of 4 people because it's going to be very tough for them and the extroverts. So we spread them out a little bit so they have more interaction and letting people know that it's okay if they listen. And you might assign them a listening project, taking notes on what the conversation was about. And they're much more comfortable, taking notes and just listening. The extrovert, will miss whole sections of stuff because they have to talk about it. So, I know that it's a challenge sometimes, but with adults especially, considering still those 5 other important principles, and there may be more. I've seen lists of 6 and things, but this is kind of the original. And for me, it's just about that we don't, as Glasser people, don't just think about delivering the material properly, but that how do we embed it in the learning of the people that we're sharing with? So that it's not just that I completed my task, I delivered the information, but how do the people walking out of the room know how to live differently because they've spent this time with us? So, to me, that's where the brilliance comes in. And, assessing that, and I think there's a certain, that non-coercive piece, non-judgmental, has a lot to do with a good foundation for applying these principles.
Okay, two things. One, my teaching partner at school, next door teacher, she was an introvert. We'd go to the same workshops. I might be somewhat engaged verbally, somewhat talking, but definitely taking notes. But she would say nothing at all. She quietly took her seat. She sat quietly. She left quietly. But the next day, she implemented everything that was said or used the information some way or another. So, she taught me a lot about ways to engage with learning. And second, I think your passion for this says a lot about a teacher. When the teacher is or instructor is providing information, your passion for it speaks loudly. And you had that with, I thought when you were presenting this information.
Well, that, and sometimes people borrow your energy
Mhm.
for things like that. It's like, well, if she thinks that's really important, maybe I need to pay attention more.
Mhm.
And if you don't convey that, it's very difficult sometimes. People feel like you're going through the motions, and
Mhm.
so much of that, like the way you listed your own favorite teachers,
Mhm.
with patience and kindness and being happy, things like that. Let's see, where was that?
Yeah.
Like Linda said, I liked what Linda said. She encouraged me to believe in myself
Mhm.
in college when others were discouraging me. So I think that, when you have that passion, like you talked about, for what you're sharing with people, that uplifts them where they can be encouraged.
Mhm.
And that's pretty special. So you may, whatever you're doing in teaching or training, you may have that impact on somebody else. You won't know it for 10 years, probably,
Yeah.
what kind of impact it had. I had one of my former students contacted me, and after I left that school system, he did not finish
Mm.
because the next director they didn't get along very well. And so he was talking to me about trying to get a job with no diploma and what that was like, and wanting some help to find a job where he could work to support his son and different things like that. And I just thought it's interesting that I'd be the one he came to, 6-7 years later. And he said, I wish I had finished high school. And I wanted to say, well, I told you so, but that never helps too much. If you hadn't been screwing around so much, it would have been fine. But it's like, now where do we go? Now, how can I help? So, but those people that you respect and had a personal impact on you as a leader, as a teacher, are the people I think you absorb part of who they are.
Mhm.
You carry that with you, and the more you're around good people like that, the more effective you can be in instructing others.
Mhm.
Brian, where are you from?
I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. I was from St. Louis originally.
Uh-huh.
We've been out here 25 years. We live in the
Oh.
desert and love it. So it's pretty, it's a great place to be. And evidently a lot of other people think the same thing, because it's growing like crazy. There's only about 5 million people in the Phoenix area now.
Wow.
When we came here, it was about 3 million.
Huh.
But it's a fun place.
Nice.
Well, it's good to have everyone here and thanks for all of your comments.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll go ahead and close out for today. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Mona.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye,
Everybody.
everybody.
Bye, Sue. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Mona,
Uh-huh.
question. Has Brian written any books or,
I don't know if he
Hmm.
has or not. I'll check that out. I haven't read. Yes, he has. He gave me one of his books, and it's really good. I'll send it to you. I mean, I'll send you the name of the book.
The title. Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So we'll
Great.
talk to you later.
Okay. Have a good one. Thank you.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay.